Hey everybody, I'm socially impaired, and I don't usually review videos that are somewhat old while also not being very relevant. But I recently came across this somewhat old interview of Hillary Clinton, and throughout this short clip of the interview, she ends up being so dishonest in such a small amount of time that I think it actually helps to create a better picture of who Hillary Clinton is as a person. And for that reason, I would like to review this quick clip of Hillary Clinton being interviewed by CBS after she wrote her book, What Happened? Hillary Rodham Clinton. That's what happened.
I wanted to tell what happened, and the primary was part of what happened. I won a landslide victory in the primary.
Okay, well, that's not how I remember it. So, for the sake of clarity, why don't we just look up the definition? Okay, so a landslide victory is an electoral victory in a political system when one candidate or party receives an overwhelming supermajority of the votes or seats in the elected body, thus utterly eliminating the opponent. Okay, so, at least according to Wikipedia, during the 2016 primary, Hillary Clinton's popular vote was almost 17 million, while Bernie Sanders' popular vote was around 13.2 million. Now, based off Wikipedia's percentages, that's about 55.2% for Hillary and 43.1% for Bernie. So, yes, Hillary Clinton did win the majority of the delegates and superdelegates. Of course, she also rigged the primary through her purchase of the DNC, but that's not what this is about. This is about Hillary Clinton's claim of a landslide victory. And according to the numbers, Hillary Clinton did not win the 2016 primary in a landslide supermajority victory. It was a victory, but not a landslide. But hey, you know what? Maybe I'm just getting hung up on semantics. Maybe I am. Make a big old fucking deal about nothing. Okay, fine. Well, then let's just see what else she has to say.
I know what it's like to win, and I know what it's like to lose. And when I lost to Barack Obama, I immediately turned around. I endorsed him. I worked for him. I convinced my supporters to vote for him.
And before you endorsed him, you fought him tooth and nail and would not concede until you absolutely had to, regardless of how much this may or may not have hurt Obama during the general. But hey, I mean, why don't we just ask Hillary at the time how she felt about this very specific issue?
Between my opponent and his camp and some in the media, there has been this urgency to end this. And, you know, historically that makes no sense. So I find it a bit of a mystery.
You don't buy the party unity argument?
I don't, because again, I've been around long enough. My husband did not wrap up the nomination in 1992 until he won the California primary somewhere in the middle of June, right? We all remember Bobby Kennedy was assassinated in June in California.
Okay, so, at the time, you did not support unity. You did not understand the people's desire to end the in-house fighting while saying that it did not make sense historically. And one of the reasons you gave on why you did not step down is because you did not want your political opponent to be assassinated before you dropped out of the race.
I didn't get the same respect from my primary opponent.
I intend to do everything I can to make certain she will be the next president of the United States.
And a lot of his supporters continue to harass and, really go after my supporters all the time. And that feeds in, I think, to the whole sexism and misogyny part of this campaign.
It's a great story. I'm sure that's the one you're putting out. What's the real one? The real fact, not the good fact.
Well, the real fact is that you, Hillary Clinton, use buzzwords like sexism and misogyny as props in order to further your own political career, provided that it is convenient for you to do so at the time. I mean, you had the exact opposite attitude when it came to defending Bill against his own sexual misconduct. In fact, you quite aggressively went after those young women for daring to speak out about what happened. So yes, you really are whatever you need to be at that moment in order to either score political points or to try and weasel your way out of a jam.
I had large groups of supporters who had to be private because if they lifted their head up online, if they were, responding on a YouTube comment chain or on Twitter to something, they were just attacked, and the attacks were so sexist about, well, you're supporting a woman because you're a woman.
So you believe that large groups of your supporters were being relentlessly harassed from Bernie supporters online. And because of that, they really had to keep their heads down and not say much online. And you base all of this on what evidence? I'm sorry, what was that?
They were just attacked.
Yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, man.
Okay, so that's actually a pretty bold claim to make if you don't have any real data to go off of, like polls or surveys. But, as it just so happens, there was a survey done at the time, which asked people to rate how aggressively they saw the online supporters of each presidential candidate. And these were the results. Well, when you look at that, Hillary Clinton supporters are at 30% when it comes to very aggressive, while Bernie Sanders supporters are around 16%. That means, at least according to this survey, that Hillary Clinton supporters are almost twice as likely to be very aggressive to their political opponents online than does the supporters of Bernie Sanders. Now, this survey does have a 3% margin of error, and it is just a survey, so take it for what it is. But there does seem to be a fundamental difference when faced with real information versus Hillary Clinton's perspective. Oh, and Hillary, you labeled Bernie supporters as sexist, and you gave an example on why you think that is. What was your example again?
They were just attacked, and the attacks were so sexist about, well, you're supporting a woman because you're a woman.
If you were determined to vote for someone specifically because of their biological sex and not policy, then there's really nothing that I can do about that. But that does not change the facts on the ground. And the fact is, if you vote for someone specifically because of their sexual organs and not their policy positions, then that does mean, at least in regards to your voting record, that you are being at least somewhat of a sexist, if not more so. And apparently, Hillary Clinton is under the impression that if you just point this out, then that is, in and of itself, sexist. Hillary Clinton fully embraced identity politics throughout her political campaign and attempted to make this look more like a women's rights issue than a presidential run with strong policy-based promotions. Look, during the primary, I ended up talking to several Hillary Clinton supporters, and I asked them why they supported this person in particular. And the majority of responses that I received was that they were supporting her because she was a woman. Full stop. Full fucking stop. Not, here's a list of things that I support, and it would be nice to have the first female president. No, it was, I am supporting her because she's a woman. Full stop. That was the majority of answers that I received when I asked why these people were supporting Hillary Clinton. I mean, this was a very common attitude that people had at the time. And I know plenty of people who got back very similar responses. So, at least a reasonably sized portion of Hillary Clinton's supporters were not only single issue voters, but the single issue that was so important to them was specifically related to her genitals and had very little, if nothing at all, to do with actual policy. Simply pointing this out is, according to Hillary Clinton, sexist.
These are the Bernie bros, so
Well, yes, and they're still out there.
Ah, yes. We can't forget about those evil, sexist Bernie bros. They're still out there. And if you're not careful, they're gonna get you.
I'm concentrating on the Trump administration, and I am proud to be a Democrat. I've been a Democrat for decades.
Yes, you have been a Democrat for decades, and you embody virtually everything that has been wrong with the Democratic Party for the last several decades. Hillary Clinton, you voted for the Iraq War. You voted for the Wall Street bailout. You voted for the Patriot Act in 2001 and the Patriot Reauthorization Act in 2006. You supported the TPP and referred to it as the gold standard. You supported the death penalty, the Keystone XL pipeline, offshore drilling and fracking. And during your most recent presidential run, 6 out of the top 10 donors to your campaign came from big banks. I mean, you didn't even support gay marriage until 2013, which is after more than a decade of opposing it. Hillary Clinton, you are definitely an established member of the modern-day Democratic Party.
Bernie's not a Democrat, and that's not a slam. That's what he says himself. And I think a lot of what he churned up in the primary campaign was very hurtful in the general election against me. And I see him doing the same thing.
As long as Bernie Sanders is pushing for a Medicare for all system, free public college tuition, ending the drug war, legalizing marijuana on the federal level, raising the minimum wage, and ending regime change, then, I mean, he can call himself whatever the fuck he wants. Independent, Democrat, Republican, whatever the fuck he wants. Because policy is what matters, not political group identity. I mean, policy based off political ideology is supposed to be how the political parties are separated. But our current modern day political parties, far more often than not, represent their donors and special interests, as opposed to representing their constituents through a conservative or progressive ideology. For the past 3 or 4 decades, legalized corruption has slowly infested the United States Congress to the extent of now being systematic. And now it is very hard to be a part of Congress while also not doing political favors for your donors, whose donations hinder on which way you cast your vote. And this long-term exposure to such systematic corruption has resulted in both parties becoming just mere shadows of their former selves. Furthermore, I really don't care how hurtful your treatment in the primary was or was not, or how it affected you in the general, or for anyone for that matter, because not only did you not care when you were running against Obama, but we are supposed to have a process in place that allows the American people to pick our candidates and representatives. So it's not Bernie's fault that we're supposed to operate within the rules and laws of a constitutional republic.
I see him, with his supporters. He doesn't disown the things they say about, some of my favorite Democrats, people like Kamala Harris, who is out there speaking up and speaking out, and she's being attacked from the left. Enough. If you don't want to support Democrats, then go somewhere else. But if you are willing to work with us, we're going to have disagreements. We're going to be pushing and pulling to try to get to the right solutions.
The Democratic Party is supposed to stand behind blue-collar workers, unions, the middle class, the poor, and are supposed to represent economic justice for the working man. The Democratic Party is supposed to fight against regime change, war, policing the world. Right now, there are several left-wing policies that are overwhelmingly popular with the American people, like Medicare for All or raising the minimum wage. And yet, for the most part, the Democratic Party is nowhere to be found. But when it comes to throwing feces at their political enemies and treating political parties as tribal groups engaged in childlike behavior, well, then they've never been easier to find, because that's usually all they do. all day, every day, and will most likely continue to do so, at least until our broken system just collapses under its own corruption.
I've been for universal health care coverage my entire adult life.
Really? Okay, well, would you like to support Medicare for all? Okay, well, now you did say that you were for universal health care.
I've been for universal health care coverage my entire adult life.
Okay, so do you support Medicare for all?
Health emergencies can't wait for us to have some theoretical debate about some better idea that will never, ever come to pass.
Okay, so then if you support universal health care, but you actively fight against a Medicare for all system, then what exactly are you fighting for?
I've worked to achieve it, and we got closer than we ever had with the Affordable Care Act. I was defending it. He wanted to start over. We were at 90% coverage.
Okay, well, guess what? The Affordable Care Act is not a single-payer healthcare system. The Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare, or Romney Care, is a right-wing plan that was thought up in the 90s by the Heritage Foundation, which is a right-wing think tank. A left-wing plan is a Medicare for all system, which something like 70% of Americans support. Even a majority of Republicans support a Medicare for all system. Now, look, I understand that it is easier to implement small little tweaks within our healthcare system and make it so a few more people are insured when otherwise they would not be than it would be to implement a Medicare for all system. But our current healthcare system is more or less just fucking broken. I mean, we have tens of millions of people who are uninsured, with millions more being underinsured, meaning that they're not going to get the real assistance they need if they actually needed it, even though they have health insurance. We have up to 45,000 people who die in this country because they do not have access to affordable health care. And then on top of that, one of the number one causes of bankruptcy is from medical bills. And on top of that, the United States ranks last among 11 industrialized countries when it comes to the health system quality, efficiency, access to care, and healthy lives. And that is according to a Commonwealth Fund report. The other countries included in the study were Australia, Canada, France, Germany, the Netherlands, New Zealand, Norway, Sweden, Switzerland, and the United Kingdom. And on top of that, we end up spending a lot more per capita than all of those other countries. As an example, the United States spends around $8,500 per person, while the United Kingdom spends around $3,400 per person, while also ranking number one on the list. We cannot afford to lose the lives that are needlessly lost for a broken healthcare system. And if you don't care about that, then you should care about the real actual wealth that is lost to a broken system. So, to try and sum all of this up, the United States ends up spending far more per person while having tens of millions underinsured and millions more underinsured. Americans drown in medical bills, and tens of thousands die every year due to affordability. And those who do get the assistance they need end up getting a healthcare system that ranks 11 out of 11, while all of those other countries provide one version or another of a single-payer healthcare system, except the United States. So, instead of staying the course and tweaking the edges of the most expensive yet least efficient healthcare system, maybe we should try and actually fix this very real problem. And I believe that we can do so through a Medicare for all system, which is so much better than just tweaking the edges of a right-wing plan as we head right for an iceberg.
I thought that was significant. So I'm not going to step back from telling my truth.
your truth. Not the truth, but your truth. So, what? Propaganda?
Not propaganda. Good facts, as opposed to real facts. Facts the government has endorsed.
Well, the fact is that you, Hillary Clinton, as a leader and as a political representative of the left, you have a terrible voting record when it comes to very important issues like the Iraq War, the Patriot Act, and the Wall Street bailouts. You use buzzwords like sexism and misogyny as props in order to distract people from legitimate criticism, all while using identity politics to push your own campaign. You ran for the presidency not because you saw very serious issues within our nation that desperately needs to be addressed through very specific legislation, but because you thought it was your turn, your final destination in your pursuit for power. Right now, the United States is engaged in endless war and operating within a very broken status quo system, with several significant problems that desperately needs to be addressed through very specific legislation. You, Hillary Clinton, are part of this broken system that functions for the few at the cost of the many, and you and yours must go if we are ever going to address these problems in a serious and significant way. Hillary Clinton, you not only actively stand in the way of real progress, but you embody our current broken system to the extent of actually being its mascot. You are truly and justifiably hated for the narcissistic, psychotic liar that you are, and you deserve everything that comes your way.